He will be here. So we can at least get started and welcome him when he arrives. By the way, this is Caitlin. She's with the DA's office. She still has that new DA civil smell about her. It's like her car. She just started when? Was it this week?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's going to be here watching us, guiding us like the North Star. So,
Beautiful.
welcome to our meeting. I will say that I have a very important meeting at 3 o'clock. I don't want, I hate these meetings, I really do, to last too very long because those of us that were here when it was under somebody else, the meetings were 2 or 3 hours, and I don't want
Oh, bless you, Rick.
that. So, and welcome to you, Brandy.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. So, all right, let's announce. Notice of the meeting was properly posted February 27th. That was a long time ago. Item 1 will be discussion of possible action regarding the minutes February 26th.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay. I would like to skip over item 2 for now and jump to item 3 and get that discussion started with, it looks like it's on here, administrative leave on item 6.
Are 3 and 6 referring to the same thing? Just two different people.
Yeah, I should have that earlier, but we did revise. If you look inside section 410 of the current handbook, which is called Welcome Brandon Interim Handbook, it's page 80 of the county handbook. Section 410 is administrative. I think it's page 80. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right there. That is how that is our current definition of administrative leave. Attached to our agenda was recommendations to expand it. And let me preface it with this, Brandy, for your sake, Christy. Currently, in Tyler Munis, there is 2 options, paid and unpaid. There's no other definition of administrative leave. The state auditor and inspector met with several offices. They didn't make it a reportable
finding.
Yeah, it wasn't reportable, but I think it would be.
I have exactly what it said, so I brought that.
Oh, well, feel free to read.
The finding was departments are utilizing administrative leave for undocumented purposes, and the policy does not provide adequate direction on how administrative leave can be used for each department. And this was mainly, when you looked at the hours of administrative leave by department, most of that was during COVID.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it goes back to 2023.
Yes, 22, 23.
Yeah, it was July
We
20
did 2.
to June 23.
Yeah.
So with that, we've done, or at least I have done a little research, just a smidge to find out if Tyler Munis can be adapted to have different categories. And the answer is yes.
So at least we can make it more specific, so you can really see during audit or any other
Right.
some such,
Yeah.
exactly what the
Welcome.
administrative leave is used for.
Yes. So, we have an attached here agenda should be 2 pages. Does everybody have that or have seen that? Have you had time to review it? And this is something that the DA hasn't seen, I don't believe. But we've gone over and tried to find every possible way to that law enforcement would need it, that HR will need it, and discretionary administrative leave. We have to keep in mind that each elected official has the right to grant this. But what we're looking for is something to plug into Tyler Munis, whether it's COVID, an investigation of an employee, and inclement weather, public health emergencies, jury duty.
Just as to the reason why the leave is taking place.
Yes.
Okay.
Like I mentioned before, I want to reiterate this for the DA in the room, the 2 DAs. We will not recommend anything to the budget board until it's signed off by you. For legality, conformity, all the stuff we need to do. So we've listed several things: COVID, quarantine, order. My office on COVID, we have to have proof from a doctor that yes, you were diagnosed with COVID. Then to return to work, we have to have you're cleared to work from the doctor. So not all offices do it that way, but that's just an example. Investigative administrative leave is item 2. So this can be conduct, ending disciplinary action, case by case stuff. Other discretionary administrative leaves could be all of these things. And we want to make sure that when we run these by the DA, that that it meets certain standards, or if we're reading anything that it does qualify. The big issue, the sell job, after the DA reviews this and will submit a DA, legal advice question, is selling it to our elected. That's the biggest issue. And so, well, they may be a little grumpy about it. I don't know. But we have to do something to give the auditor the ability when they're auditing. For example, in our office, there were 58 days of admin leave. 54 of them were COVID related. I know, Brandon, you can explain in your office, perhaps, if you're willing to share.
Yeah, we had Mark Jones off for a while. He got a shot after he exhausted all his leave. So that was a chunk of it as well for us.
That's definitely
an
extenuating circumstance.
Yeah. So each office is going to have their own issues related to that. So we just want to make sure it meets legal standards, and then once we get that, we'll take it to the budget board, and some bald-headed guy gets to stand up in front of the budget board and try to explain this and let them debate it. So this will either be a lot of time or it'll be a huge success. I'm hoping we'll have it.
Well, and like you and I mentioned a few days ago, well, when I told you, because right before spring break, I tested positive for COVID unexpectedly. I'm like, what? And when I came back, I was told to just use sick leave, that we weren't doing administrative leave for COVID anymore. So I don't even think everybody's on the same
Yeah.
page with.
I think that was killed. At some point, I believe the BOCC did away with the
Yeah,
administrative.
that's what my people thought. So I
We've
don't,
been
so not everybody even.
I believe the opposite. I believe the budget board hadn't got. I'm not real sure. I mean, we haven't
I
checked.
think it was
minutes.
open-ended, and then there was never an end date. So what I've also
Right.
tried to find that as well.
Yeah.
My question about the actual policy, we're calling it COVID leave, but I think part of the spirit was that we would address future pandemics. So my question to the group would be, do we want to limit this to COVID since it's a policy, or should we consider, I see health emergency later. I mean, I know that there was specific COVID or any other, I don't know if we should consider any other wording.
I was thinking of the word pandemic. COVID or pandemic related disease. Because I'm not sure we give administrative leave for certain measles.
No, I mean, that was a unique circumstance that the whole nation lived, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully we won't experience that in our lifetime, but I think the public health emergencies may cover it going forward, and then we agree to use COVID, continue with that type of leave for the departments that choose. I think it's limits us somewhat.
So we could, instead of calling that COVID leave on number 1, we could call that public health emergency leave, and then maybe in parentheses, such as COVID, and then just take that bullet away down there where it says public health emergency, and just make that sort of cover the gamut of that.
Sure.
Something like that, if we wanted to.
And I don't, let's go back 30 years ago. The Oklahoma City bomb. It was chaos in downtown. And so there's, I think, I don't have my list in front of me, but can you scroll through that?
Special circumstances
Yeah.
ordered by elected officials, found things in there. Security incidents, government
Right,
shutdowns.
okay.
So
So
no, I'm not on the original.
one of our
I
goals,
clicked on the attachment.
Brandy and Christy Ray, is just a quick refresher for you two. Yes, we have a 112-page handbook. I'm trying to carve it from
Oh, I'm well aware of our handbook.
that.
I bet Christy is too, probably more than any of us.
And we've got a 37-page version of it that we're going to start from today, later in this meeting. So we're trying to carve it.
And this does make me a little sad because it's going in the wrong
I know.
direction.
Yeah,
It's getting bigger instead of littler.
counterintuitive.
Yes, it is.
Just remember, if you have coding for munis, it doesn't need to be in the policy. It can be administrative leave. You don't have to have every little definition in your policy. You just define what administrative leave is, and you leave it up to that, and it can be literally 2 paragraphs. You don't have to, if you want your people to be very well aware, so you don't have to answer these questions, by all means put it in the handbook. If you're asking what's legally required, I'm gonna tell you, You just need to have a section that says administrative leave covers these categories, and it's up to the elected officials to grant administrative leave.
Would that
And
stand up
approving
to
administrative.
audit? Like if they're auditing and all they see is literally just administrative leave?
Well, if Munis has the code, if you in order to, like, I don't know about you, but I'm just gonna tell you for the DA's office, when we go into Workday, it has administrative leave and it only has certain categories that you can check,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I mean, you're defining administrative leave, and where those categories are is gonna be in your Munis system that they have to check to do that. I don't think that you need to, for an auditor, define every little leave in the policy if you've got
In
it
the
in your,
policy.
if you've got it in the actual document that the timesheets.
But would you have to define, for audit purposes, would you have to define in the handbook that everybody must go into Munis and pick a category?
Well,
Or the supervisor, or whoever
For the
needs to
proper
do that?
tracking and.
Yes.
like I said, to me, that is not necessarily policy. That is like more like training. Like to me, what this is that this you're calling it an HR a handbook policy, but it looks more like to me a training manual where you're telling new employees, this is what administrative leave means. This is what the different types. You have to go into Munis and you have to select one, but you have to get permission from your supervisor to do that. All of that is training. But the policy is literally like, these are the types of leave. You have sick leave, you have annual leave, there's administrative leave.
Mm-hmm.
Then you define them. As you all were talking about, each person has kind of a different way they handle each thing. As long as the administrative leave is standardized in the Munis system and is available, each individual employee can determine whether or not they approve that administrative leave. I'm just saying that where this handbook has gotten out of hand is I believe that when everybody was like, well, how is the employee going to know this? How are they going to know that? And so we threw everything in the kitchen sink in there, and now you've got, what you said, how many pages?
112.
112 pages. So when you talk about, will the DA approve or bless off on this? I'm going to tell you, I've approved and blessed off on policy handbooks at other agencies that were 20 pages.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so some of your stuff here is really more of a policy question, not a legal question. Do we have to have it in this handbook? Yes or no? I can tell you what needs to be in there. Yeah, you need to have in there your discrimination. You need to have your complaint process filed. You need to have, there's certain things you absolutely have to have in there. The degree and depth that you go into is probably going to be more along the lines of policy. So I hope that kind of helps clarify,
Sure.
like, because you're sitting there going, here, let the DA go. I'm like, well, if you're asking me to bless that, I'm gonna say, well, this is what you want. There's nothing illegal in here.
Necessary. Right.
But you're not. If you're asking me what's required, that's a different question.
Sure.
For me, there's a couple things, but one is, when the auditor comes back with a non-reportable, to me, that's nothing more than a recommendation. They've obviously not found anything that's against statutory protocol. Correct. They just gave us a recommendation on what they may want to see for the future.
Correct.
I mean, that don't necessarily mean that we have to.
But if they find it again the next year,
If
it
it's
becomes
another
reportable.
non-reportable, yeah.
And I don't know that. Well, when we talked to them, because I asked them that question, I said, "So is this something that's against statute?" And they said, "Not necessarily. It's mainly a recommendation." So I didn't take the understanding that they would upgrade that to a reportable. I mean, maybe so, but maybe we need to get clarification on what their role is on that. But and then the second thing, the whole COVID thing has always thrown me off because for years we're told, well, if Paul's off work, I can't say, hey, what's wrong with you? And here we say the only way you can get leave is if you for sure come back and tell us what disease you have. That's totally counterintuitive what we've learned over the past however long. You're forcing somebody to come in and bring a note that says, I absolutely have COVID-19 or whatever. I mean, why can't we make them tell you got AIDS or anything else? I mean, what's the difference? that's an odd one to me. I don't, I mean, not that, I mean, I don't care, personally, from my own personal situation, but
It would be a HIPAA violation.
I would think so, but I mean,
But that's not applicable. But, what you also have to understand is anybody who's out on sick leave for longer than 3 days technically can be put on FMLA, and you are allowed to ask about the conditions of FMLA after 3 consecutive days out. So where COVID is a different story is it required, at one point, there was a national CDC that said you had to quarantine for 14 days, which would be most people's actual full annual leave or vacation leave. So they made an exception because of the recommendation initially was 14-day quarantine period. But at any time after 3 days, if somebody's sick and they're out on sick leave, yes, they have sick leave. The sick leave is not to be interpreted or meant to be a free day. I mean, there's no such thing as, oh, I need a mental health day. Do you have a mental health problem? Like, it's not extra annual leave. And you are, as an employee, after they've been gone for 3 days, entitled to a doctor's note.
you actually get work on enough for PTSD for mental health reasons, but anyway, so like, as far as like, so the way I've always understood it though is that you just had to have a doctor say that this person's under my care until such date. I didn't know that you could force them to put their diagnosis on them.
Well, how do you know that they qualify for FMLA? Because the FMLA paperwork actually asks for.
What, you go to the doctor's office and they fill that out.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm just saying, FMLA,
So we can't-
FMLA requirements after 3 days of being gone, you can actually put somebody on FMLA and ask for that information. That's part of the federal statutes. So, I mean, if you're asking, I don't understand. I don't know what your information is. So maybe there's something that I'm not aware of that you're referring to. That off the top of my head here. But I'm just saying that FMLA, which is the national policy,
Sure.
you fill out paperwork and they do go back and they say, I have this condition. I'm expected to return on this date, or I'm going to need off this many days, or I'm going to need intermittent FMLA leave. I'm just saying, after 3 days off consecutively sick, at that point, if they're going to need more than 3 days, you as the employer do kind of have the right to be like, are they ever coming back? I mean, am I going to let them take all 10 sick days of the year, like right now, and not ever ask them for anything and not put them on FMLA?
Yeah,
That's going to be a policy decision for you. But I'm just saying, when you talk about what you should require, what you can do, I'm just telling you, after 3 days, there is a mechanism to legally ask for that.
Yeah, maybe we just need to shore that up because, again, my understanding was that, so if they are on some extended leave, we haven't asked, tell us to bring in your lab results. We can evaluate them.
Yeah.
But I mean, or your diagnosis, we come from the perspective of have a doctor sign something that says that you're under my care until such date, at which point you're cleared to return to work. So we would know.
Right.
Yeah, because obviously we're not just going to willy-nilly stick them on days and days of sick leave without some
Right, and
documentation.
some type of documentation.
Yeah,
But like I said, there is, if you actually go back and just look at what FMLA lets you do, and there's a frequently asked questions page on the FMLA website that will say exactly, it tells employees exactly what they can ask and what they can't ask, and what they can do and what they can't do. But I just wanted to let you know, so that there's not any misinformation about you can't ever ask them. They're calling in and saying, I'm sick, I need to take a sick day. Yes, you don't have to invade their privacy and ask, what do you got? Do you have, what do you have for COVID? You don't have to ask that. But after 3 consecutive days and they are still on sick leave and they aren't going to return, the conversation probably should be engaged with through your own HR department about, okay, you've been out 3 days, are you going to be out anymore? If so, we need to put you on FMLA and we need to make sure that you can get that. Because that's the other thing too. Remember, you can on FMLA, you can be on FMLA and be exhausting your annual and your medical leave. But if you don't put them on FMLA and you wait till after they exhaust leave and then put it on there, you've kind of extended the time for that illness.
So what happens in a scenario where, because we've had employees who won't share their diagnosis, and when we call the doctor's office, they tell us it's black eye. So can we compel the employee to speak, and if they don't speak, we fire them?
Well, I mean, you're going to have, that's kind of a wide open question because I don't even know the circumstances within that. But if you have something where you're asking for information, the employer won't give it, that is always a request for legal services on a case by case basis. We'll be more than happy to help you answer because I can't genetically across the board answer that question.
We've never had a doctor's office complaint. They always tell us that they refuse to give us that information. They claim it's HIPAA. Maybe it's not.
Well, it's HIPAA for them if they don't have a patient release.
Uh-huh.
So it's HIPAA for them. HIPAA's not something we violate.
That
It's something
we are
we are not
bound by
Hey,
that.
we can ask for it. If they give us their medical, we didn't violate HIPAA.
Right.
Their
They
medical
did.
provider did. So when you talk about HIPAA, I'm like, well, when I say it's not applicable, don't get into the opinion that we can actually violate HIPAA. We can't violate HIPAA because we're not a
We're
medical.
not bound by it. Makes sense.
By the way, her expertise is in personnel.
Well, some of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Been doing it for a long time. I was on this committee last time.
Yeah.
You know, back before the days of Doug even.
Yeah. We're trying to forget this. I'm kidding, Doug. All right. So this is something we can use to explain to the budget board as policy, and we can keep section 4-10, I think, on page 80 as that short little paragraph. That's what I'm hearing. Would that be correct?
Do it now?
So we can keep that as brief as it is. We can talk about policy, let the electeds know that they have these different definitions of admin leave, but it's still going to be in the system's payroll. Could we do that?
When I look at this, I would definitely get rid of the COVID leave and do what everybody suggested and make that part of the public health emergency. Now, you were giving examples, and I know I wasn't at the last meeting because that's the reason why I was late today is I had a conflict because I have courts a lot of times at 1:30, okay, at the exact same time you guys are meeting. So, but I watched it, and when you were talking about these examples, do we need to have all these examples in the manual? And once again, that is a policy determination, not a legal determination. So when you were asking me, how we draft this, I can draft it however you want. I can consolidate it and be a wordsmith for you, but content is going to be up to you. And the one thing I will tell you is if it shouldn't be in there or what you were trying to put in there is not correct.
Right.
Or would violate a law, but it's pretty broad open. So like I said, I think you can cut this way down. The other discretionary leave categories, I think could be in munis.
That's it.
In
And have the
the,
rest in the policy.
I would think that, honestly, 1, 2, 3. And then, now I know that there might be some more additional stuff, but I think, Brandon, with regard to your officers, would that be something that is helpful to you to cut it back so that you guys can explain it internally? I mean, that's the other thing too.
I mean, I definitely think something for parsimony is better. I mean, outside of an attorney and a PhD, nobody wants to read 112 pages.
No, and you're not going to.
Yeah.
But
In addition to the litany of policies we have internally as well. So yeah, the shorter the better for us. I mean, whatever's going to meet whatever standards we have to abide by, whether it's auditors or budget board or whoever. Yeah, there's no reason to make something 2 pages if it could be 1 line.
Well, in the shortened version of the handbook, it's 2 sentences.
That's
It
really
simply says
all you
paid
need
or
in the
unpaid.
handbook. This would suffice in a policies and procedures outline and would cover us in an audit.
Yeah.
right, that's what I'm trying to get at this station. Is that your examples are more for what your training manuals are going to be like. to let your employees know, like an employee handbook that says, this is the kind of administrative, do you see what I'm saying? Your policies just say you have it, it's discretionary administrative leave to be determined. And you could even say like, maybe granted for special circumstances determined by the department head or elected official, the employee will be expected to get approval for administrative leave and to select in the MUNIS system the appropriate leave they've been granted.
Well, the employee doesn't
Something
even
like
do
that.
that.
Did the employee not fill in their own MUNIS?
Supervisor.
The supervisor does.
Mhm.
See, I don't know,
Yeah.
every place that I hate to say it, but every place that is going to things like Workday or, those pay.com systems where the individuals are entering their own leave. And that's why I'm saying, like, in our Workday system, whenever you're on FMLA, it has the drop down for FMLA. You can't select it until your supervisor clears you to select it. So even though it's on the drop down list, if they want to put in administrative leave and try to sneak it by you, they can't, because it has to be approved by the supervisor
For them to be
even
used.
select that particular type of leave. And when I say that, I'm saying those are the types of things that, when you come to an audit, they're really just trying to make sure that you've got your categories and that leave is being done. And that to me is on a different, that's not covered by the policy. Because you can say it all day long, but if you're not implementing it, that's where you're going to get in trouble with the audit.
Correct.
So purposes of the handbook, we can leave it as.
Just like I said, just
As
the first
it
two
is.
sentences.
2 sentences.
Yeah. That's the revised
Oh, yeah,
version.
like that. That's it.
And we can just, I think, new employee orientation maybe is the place for a list like that. To say, here are some examples.
Possibly. I mean, I think you could cover in new hire orientation, it is really just familiarize the individual with the types of leave. I think when we get to administrative leave, it really is and an elected or official
Discretion.
approval. It is really supporting that decision. So I don't know that we would discuss it necessarily in orientation. Maybe just as a category of leave.
Right. Okay.
And then I think it's a case-by-case basis because it is an exception type of leave that requires escalated approvals.
Okay.
And the categories, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I was gonna give you an example of the dangers of doing the examples too, is that because it says, well, volunteer firefighters, right? They can come off. But you know what? I know there's a lot of military guys that do the two, that are the once a month kind of guys, and I don't see an administrative leave category for them, but I see it for volunteer firefighters. Well, I don't see it for any other type of volunteer public service stuff, and I can see people going, well, you give it to a volunteer firefighter, but I do this kind of work and I was denied leave. So there are dangers in giving examples.
So it's specific.
That's specific. And there are benefits to keeping it broader for when things come up, for instance, like the pandemic, or it becomes broader. And if you ever have something like that, remember the board, the BOCC, and each, they could actually, pass a resolution to deviate if there's something that's significant like a pandemic or thing. So I don't know necessarily you need all of these in a policy to be covered. Now, with that being said, I don't know what you're referring to or what the state auditor told you either. So if the state auditor, but I'm assuming the state auditor is saying, I can't see when I'm coming in these categories.
Correct.
Right.
Well,
that's
those
the thing.
categories to me, I'm like, well, if you have the system and, you're documenting to the file, like somebody sends you an email and says, I'm requesting administrative leave and it's granted, that documentation just needs to be kept in a file. So when the auditor comes, they can see this is the and that you have on the MUNIS system, the categories.
The drop down.
The drop down where the supervisor can select it, and then all you have to do is document and let the employee know, you have asked for administrative leave for volunteer firefighter service. It has been granted, and you tell him what you're granting, and you select it, and it matches up, and hopefully you have documentation.
It just makes the administrative leave more transparent.
Right. But the thing is the auditor is more concerned with the function, not the policy as much. At least that's always been my understanding. So, because it doesn't do you any good if you have all these examples and you have a great policy that defines everything like this, and then you're not doing it. That almost hurts you when you come to an audit. Well, you have these categories of leave, and yet
You're not even utilizing them.
You're not utilizing them. I'm seeing administrative leave being put in, but you're not designating which category, so you're not following your own policy. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's cautionary tale. Like I said, I know the concern has been to cut this thing down. The examples are great, but I do think that we have meshed your policies and your procedures manual into one, and if that's what you want to do, that's great. It's a big document.
Well, we're expecting much less. So that's good info, and thank you for that. Paul, why don't you read for her one more time? Were you here when Paul read what the auditor?
No.
Let me find it. Departments are utilizing administrative leave for undocumented purposes, and the policy does not provide adequate direction on how administrative leave can be used for each department.
Oh, well, then that sounds more like what we're talking about here. But they're saying it's that it has to be accounted. I just don't know if I agree with the state auditor's interpretation of that. But they're saying that it has to be a countywide policy on all the administrative leave, and every county official doesn't have discretion on that administrative.
So my interpretation of that is identifying what
The types
category
of
of administrative leave it is.
Yeah.
Well, then you know, like I said, you can do this and say you could even, if you want to do and keep paragraphs 1, 2, and 3, and then on the bullet points, you don't have to have an explanation. You can just say office closures or implement whether public health emergencies, jury duty. You know, you can go into that and that would at least reduce
Okay.
the length of it and maybe make a compromise there.
It's almost like this is for the elected officials and
Right.
it's not for the random employees.
Right.
It's almost like we're trying to do something to tell the decision makers about this, what they can and can't do or should and shouldn't do.
Well, and
I don't know.
Yeah.
If that's gonna.
pretty sure that everybody, they like that independence.
Right.
But like I said, right now, it's either paid or unpaid. And that elected official loves that ability to say, yeah, okay, we're gonna call this. But I don't know of anyone that got unpaid administrative leave personally. But there may be cases of it, but that's right there. But I think shorten the list if we can. If you heard what she said, we'll shorten that up, we'll tighten it up. Brevity to me is the best, and I want to kill the 112-page handbook.
In terms of brevity, there are also duplications here because jury duty leave, bereavement leave are their own leave categories. Those are not necessarily administrative leave categories, so I just wanted to.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that too.
Yeah.
We addressed those elsewhere.
Right.
And your volunteer civic service can cover your volunteer firefighters.
Or National Guard, or
Yeah.
okay.
And I also, just let you know, unsafe work conditions. I have a hard, who's making the determination if there's an unsafe work condition, and are they qualified?
Are you opening that up to?
Right, to make it like them saying, well, I have allergies to mold, and I come in here and I'm sneezing every day, so there's mold. I'm like, who's making the determination of the healthy work?
Do you remember when they dropped
condition?
Yeah.
pallets on the roof up on 6th, and
Yeah.
we had to abandon the 6th floor. The public
Right.
defender, districts 1 and 3.
Uh-huh.
We had to leave the building. We put Mr. Ravitz and his people over in PDA. In District 3, we went out to the yard.
Right, and that there was somebody that ultimately made the determination that was an unsafe work condition. I'm assuming that was, but like I said, I worry about, I mean, I'm not saying that that's not a leave, but I would think that would qualify also as a public health emergency. Like, there's a lot of repeated things in here. I think you could get some broader categories in here and maybe have like 5 or 6 categories
Okay.
that everything could fit into.
Yeah, that was a determination by the VOCC to abandon.
Right.
Excuse me.
Right, but you had somebody making that public, but I'm just saying that public health emergency or unsafe work conditions, that to me, it's like a public health or safety emergency would probably cover. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
you can consolidate this. I think that what we did is we probably went in and looked at what kind of leave have we granted in the past, and we're just going to keep a list here. But let's, if you broaden it to include all those things, you might be able to get away
Okay.
with a small, with maybe a half a page administrative leave policy that meets what the auditor says. Policy.
Yeah. I've recommended the handbook. It's just the 2 sentences that you've got.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
I need clarity on that motion.
And that in the employee handbook, we would keep the 2 sentences that Leanne came up with in the revised handbook.
The new improved shorter version.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then we can expound upon that or expand that in the policies and procedures when we get around to that portion.
Was there a second? Did we hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion, any additional discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Absolutely not.
That's okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 votes aye, 1 abstention. Motion. Thank you. Christie, we understand.
Thank
Don't be embarrassed, kids. I'll get back here to the agenda. That was item 3, is that correct?
Yes.
And part of you. Okay. Item 2 is, I think the reason why I had this on here, because of the admin leave, and before we decide on a new handbook, I think I put it in there so that we could go give us some flexibility to go back to the budget board, insert the new administrative leave language. I'm just throwing this out here. If we don't have to, we can live with it the way it is. But to insert it into that interim 112-page thing, insert it, and then say, in a month or 2, we're going to come back with a completely revised handbook. This will be in here, but we wanted to go ahead and make that change now. Is that something you think we should do as a board? Should we go to the budget board with this revision or keep it as it is in 112-page encyclopedia?
My opinion is what it depends on the timeline, because we are going to be dealing with another 23-24 ACFR that will potentially be completed by the end of this fiscal year. And so that change would need to be made prior to then.
What was the thing you just said?
Well, we're starting a whole new ACFR now.
What's that? The audit.
The audit.
Oh.
Whole new audit on 23-24. So that county
So
clerk
an
hopes to
effort.
have done by the end of the fiscal year.
In
This
efforts
fiscal
to
year.
keep from getting another non-reportable
Correct.
finding,
Yes.
it'd probably be best to go ahead and implement this now.
I was thinking the April budget, which
But I would halt that because item 5 has to do with another finding on your,
yes.
so you may want to
We're-
address both.
Alright, let's hold off on that. That's good. Let's jump to item 5, if that's okay. I'll explain.
That was the simple thing they had on the finding was the county does not provide clear rules regarding holiday leave for 28-day cycle employees.
And that is Leah, law enforcement.
What was it they said specifically?
The county does not provide clear rules regarding holiday leave for 28-day cycle employees.
So what does the handbook currently say about holiday leave?
Everybody gets 8 hours.
How is that not?
Yeah, we went
What?
through this a bunch. I was actually kind of confused when they came and talked to us about this one. I mean, we went back and forth about this for quite a while on the Handbook committee. I think it's on page 66, if I remember
Good memory, yes,
right. I just
310.
recently looked at it.
310
on the old hand.
Yeah.
on the
The Oklahoma County shall observe a total of 12 holidays per calendar year, doing so by providing a total of 96 granted holiday leave time hours, which we've actually talked about adjusting that because some years we have 13. But and it says regardless
Regardless of work schedule.
accrued at 8 hours per holiday. Yeah. I don't know.
Does this have to do with that 173 hours and overtime and stuff?
Well, what I think happened, I mean, after all the common sense sucked from my head, I think that eventually what we got to was the way that executive time is set up, the way that I understand it, is that the reason it came back to the 28-day cycle is because, to my knowledge, law enforcement is the only ones that work on a holiday. So like us, the jail, juvenile. I don't think there's any other 8-hour divisions work on holidays. I may be wrong about that. But the reason they pinpointed the 28-day cycle is because, from the best of my understanding, the way that executive time is set up is such that, so if somebody actually works on the holiday, they're granted the 8 hours, but then it shows that they had 8 hours maybe put into the bucket. But if they didn't work on the holiday, it shows that they were granted the 8 hours, and then on the same day they used the holiday.
Right, so it's
So
earned and
it
used.
doubled the amount of leave that person got.
Even though it's broken up or differentiated between 8 hours earned and then 8 hours used.
Well, that's the way that the report read to me,
Uh-huh.
is that it just combined the hours. So like if you're supposed to get 8,
Mm-hmm.
it actually appears that you got 16 based on the report that they had, because there were a couple of people that had
Well,
exactly double what they should have.
if you worked that day, I mean, you would get 16 because you get 8 hours earned and then 8 hours that you actually work that day, right?
Correct. Well, you still get just 8 hours in the bucket.
Right, in the bucket.
Yeah, there's 3 scenarios for holiday leave.
Right,
Either you're scheduled to work and you don't, you're
Mhm.
scheduled to work and you do, or you're just not scheduled. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's 3 possible scenarios for holiday leave, and I didn't dive into it any further, but I suspect because I had my own internal guy run a report, he didn't find the same information.
Mhm.
So I once we provided that to them, I was kind of done with it at that point. So I mean, I don't mean that.
No, I know exactly what you.
I mean, there's no point in spinning our tires in the mud. So that's the way I understood it, was that, there were some people that had like 190 something hours of leave, and the way that it read to me on the report was that it was the employees who were scheduled off that day, or so they got it and they burned it in the same day. It looks like they got it once when they really didn't. I don't think there was any problems with the ones that went into the bucket. So the scenarios where they were going into the bucket were either A, you were scheduled off, or 2, you were scheduled on and you worked.
Worked.
Yeah.
But I would still think they should be able to differentiate between holiday hours earned
Well, I don't
and
think it was an
holiday
auditor's
hours
problem. I think it was an executive time problem.
used. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think, and I mean, again, I'm totally speaking out of turn because I don't know I don't know how the information got brought forward, but the way it looked to me on the report that they had, it appeared that it was an executive time calculation problem, not an evaluation problem to figure it out. Because when I talked to them about it, they said that seems like the obvious answer.
Mm-hmm.
But the auditor's findings was saying that there was something wrong with your policy.
Which I didn't agree with that either.
Uh,
Because it says regardless.
On the face of that policy, I didn't see anything wrong with it.
And I think there's even examples, to your point, I think there's even examples of the 28-day cycle in there, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, for 110 pages, you probably.
Well, that's this whole thing was the 28-day cycle.
How does DOC,
I don't know.
Department of Corrections, let's just go with, because their policy, whatever their policy, because they're gonna have the exact same scenario.
Yeah.
And if their policy passed
See,
muster,
and where it gets really wild for us is, and I think it becomes kind of complicated if you don't have any reference. So at one point, whenever we had talked about this in the past, the county policy, and I don't remember exactly, but it said something along the lines of you get a scheduled day off. So however many hours you're scheduled, that's how many holiday hours you get. Well, then it came back, and we actually requested, the group collectively requested a DA's opinion, which they provided, and it said that we could not do any more than 8 hours. So I guess there's a statute that's being referenced that it's indicated in the statute as vacation and sick leave time. It doesn't indicate holiday, but somehow we came up with that. So where it gets really weird for us is that we've got a lot of employees who work 10 and 12 hours. So whenever they're off on a holiday, they're not actually off. What has to happen is either if they want to be off, so let's say they work a 12-hour shift and they're scheduled to be off. They get 8 hours of holiday and they have to put 4 of their own leave in, or they have to come to work.
Right.
That's their options.
They don't automatically get 12
Correct.
hours because that's a full day.
Right. So the same thing for our 10-hour people. They either have to put their own leave in, or they have to come in and work the other 2 hours because they're only granted 8.
Jeez.
So that also would kind of mess up any reporting that's done on specifically on holiday leave. But what's weird about it is that some of these people that have accrued holiday leave will use holiday leave. See what I'm saying?
Right.
So if they've got 24 hours of holiday leave sitting in the bucket,
Right. They would use that.
they would use that. So then it looks like they've gotten more time. Do you follow what I'm saying? That's where it becomes screwy with us, and I'm sure juvenile and detention as well.
The same way.
Yeah, because most people that are off on holiday, I mean, not very many of them want to pack their stuff up and come to work for 4 hours.
That's where that admin leave can come into play.
I was thinking the exact thing. I'm like, sounds like
Plug in a couple hours of admin.
Well, I mean, we do want to try to do whatever's right. I mean, but it's weird.
Yeah.
There's been some
Yeah.
weird leave policies throughout. It's throughout our history on this committee. So I mean, that's one of them for me. But
there's always an extenuating circumstance.
yeah, so that's where I think the issue came in, at least from our perspective. I can only speak for us. And I don't know, I didn't see the behind the scenes. They just came and talked to us specifically about our department. I'm sure they talked to y'all about all the departments, but they only talked to us about just our department. So I don't know if there was another policy issue outside of the 28-day cycle, but whenever they walked out of our office, they said, okay, yeah, we're good with those explanations, and it goes away. It wasn't even a non-reportable finding after they left our office. So, I don't know what the final copy said.
Was there issue with the verbiage and policy not being specific for 28-day cycle people, or
That's the way it reads to me.
the manner in which it's documented in Munis?
Good question.
Brandon, you're saying, did I hear you correctly, that by the time they left your office, it wasn't an issue?
Yeah, we signed no documentation.
Mhm.
There was 2 non-reportable findings, and both of them, John and Trevor both said that, yeah, we're good with those explanations. And we provided them documentation, of course, it wasn't just.
Okay. Well, and it was
Voice
a non-report
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
But
So
we just wanted to address it before
Yeah,
it becomes reportable in the
I'm
future.
totally fine with whatever, whatever we need to do. I'm a little unclear on, because again, I think the reporting was more an issue than it was the actual policy.
Policy,
The way that I
right.
understood it
Yeah.
was the reporting, like I said, the reports that they had were, it was confusing to read, and I've got a ton of institutional knowledge. And again, I think that's just what executive time spits out. It's
Yeah.
just, I mean,
Well, just
Everybody
like
knows
having
what's
different
awesome.
categories for admin leave, that seems to be the flaw that they were snagging on.
Yeah.
Same deal for this
well,
too.
I'm pretty sure there's already different, I mean, I don't know how many codes are in there, but I believe there's more than one.
For admin,
Yeah. I know for a fact we can track COVID specifically.
well, there's paid and unpaid, right?
Well, there's another one too, I believe.
Is there?
Yeah, because we used a separate code. I can't remember the code.
Yeah,
number.
maybe they did add a COVID specific one.
There used to be. I'm not saying it's still there, but there used to be.
That sounds familiar, but then when you look on our reports, it doesn't say the COVID specific.
Right.
It just says admin.
That's what I'm saying. I think a lot of it is I don't think the canned reports that are in executive time help are helpful.
Right.
Just like, anytime you want to run a financial report, you always have to run the same report, and then you have to just put it in Excel and try to extrapolate what you
Right.
do. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way that it's. I think that's just the way that those canned reports are. And I think the same thing happened with this. That's
That's
my
because the
knowledge.
report that we got that defined how many admin leave days
Mhm.
were taken by each department,
Yeah.
it did not distinguish
Differentiate.
whether it was COVID or not,
Or even paid or not.
or even paid or not. It
That's
just
the
says
same for the departments that I support, and I have a tiny bit of familiarity with. It's not enough to speak here. I'm not comfortable speaking to make decisions for this meeting, but that has been and I run that pretty regularly. Time reporting reports, and there's only one code for admin leave, and then there's the corresponding that is being used by the departments I support. That might be different for your departments. And then there's the corresponding tracking code.
I wonder if there's a way in Munis, in executive time, to be able to report that differently, to capture those like subcategories or whatever.
Yes.
You make as many as you want.
Yes, yes. To Lisa's description earlier, absolutely, we can create additional codes, Matt.
But when we pull the report, will it pull those subcategories or will it just look like a bunch of admin leave?
You want to identify the codes that you would want to run.
Okay.
And I typically run, just for clarification, the entire scope of the available codes.
Okay.
Maybe that
And-
wasn't
Yeah.
done.
And to go to your point, keeping it brief in here, you can say the administrative leave will be approved as, to one of the approved administrative leave codes in the system.
Mhm.
And then you don't have to put it here, but it's over here. And then the auditor can say, oh, administrative leave is what's been coded in the system. Where's your codes? And then you print out a list of the codes and then there's your proof,
Yeah. So
right?
Yes.
Because that can happen.
Again,
right?
that's back to
Ideally.
admin leave. How do you
Right.
think we should address this one, 28-day
What
cycle
if,
employees?
okay, I'm looking at kind of this new one and I'm in the old one. Anyway, a total of 12 holidays per calendar year shall be observed, but sometimes it's more than 12? Is that true? Sometimes we have 13?
Sometimes.
This year,
So we can't even necessarily say how many days.
Right.
We could say 12 or 13. I mean, I don't know if we want to say that. But you can get the hours. So it says, therefore, holiday pay for 96 hours of leave time shall be granted per calendar year, accrued at 8 hours per date. What if we just took that away? And didn't
'cause
say
that's the
8
problem.
hours per,
Right.
and just let
Well,
you to figure out what yours
If
were.
it's 10 or 12, then we're
that's what I'm
8.
saying. We were there, and we got our hands slapped by the auditor saying that we shouldn't be there. But we always and I don't remember the exact. I think
So are you saying you totaled up
It's
more
been
than
a
the
lot. I remember
96?
the 8 versus 12
Yeah.
hour shift differential. This policy also talks about shift differential.
Mhm.
So I can do some research, more
Yeah.
research on it. But what I'm saying is I'm trying to figure out if the auditor's problem was with the way the policy was
Right.
written, or if it was with the way
It was
that they couldn't tell when they went to go pull, when they did the audit and they go, okay, pull me 15 timesheets from, Jill. And then they said, I can't tell from looking at the policy and the codes, I can't tell what I'm looking at. I'm having a hard time figuring out
which they were.
what the auditor's really trying to get at. Because if I look at this policy, I don't see the holes, but then again, I'm not doing the
Well,
audit.
I don't know, as in-depth as they got in some of their discussions, I would venture to guess it's the latter.
But it's
That it
they can't match
didn't
it. They
just
can't
match
match it. And I'm telling you, having represented multiple different state agencies and audits, the auditors, they come in and you really need to be able to spoon feed. They need to be able to see. They need to go policy,
So could we
item, and they're playing the matching game. They're playing the match, and if things don't match up, that's when they want that match up. That's why I'm saying if we coordinate your policy language by referencing a code and a code printout, and then they can see the code printout, and the code printout says this is the code for this type of leave, and then they pull that person's timesheets or that grouping of timesheets and look at it. They have the code list. Now they have
so could
the
we
policy in the code list, and they can look at and match it all up.
So could we add just a small little something, and I know we're trying to go, shorter, not longer, but a small little clause that really encompass the shift differentials, at least in the policy. But then as far as Munis goes, for those employees that actually abide by that shift differential, either a 10-hour day or 12-hour day, can they have a different setting or something? That way these employees are part of that shift differential. That way it's earmarked in Munis, it's stated on the policy, and so then you'll know that there is a difference with those employees.
I think it's
Like if there's
like I said,
some sort
I think
of
it's about playing the matching game. I think that they're looking for something in the policy that they can match to.
if there's some way in Munis we can identify those employees as different as the normal 8-hour employees.
Yeah, I pushed for that a lot back in the day. And so kind of to answer your question, so the way the handbook used to be worded was, it said that holidays were given, and I don't remember exactly, we can go back and pull it up, but it said something along the lines of, you were given holiday leave for a scheduled day, or something for the scheduled hours, something like that. So we did 12 hours. Well, then somehow it came up, and I don't remember who brought it up in the handbook committee, that sheriff's employees were getting 12 hours a day, and everybody else was getting 8 hours a day. And so we just kept doing it because the handbook was never changed. And so we were able to do that for a fair amount of time until the auditor never hung us up on it because the handbook had said you could do it based on the scheduled hours, which is what we did. Well, then the handbook changed, and of course we had to change at that point. So I'm all for going back to whatever their assigned shift is how many hours of holiday leave they get.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I do remember, and I know that this board, and I don't know if that would be something we could find, but at some point, this board had requested DA's opinion, which was brought to the group. And the opinion was that everybody should.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or Lisa, could you guys track your DA opinions, right?
Yeah, I can find. I can find it.
Right.
Long it'll take, but yeah,
Right.
I can find it, and I remember those about the time frame that happened. I was here when that happened, so the last time. So I can probably find it for you if it can't be found in the minutes, because I do know that it was a discrepancy with county hours. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that,
Yeah.
it was a discrepancy in how a statute was written. And I don't know if maybe the solution is to go address with the legislature. Because I don't know, Brandon, how are other counties handling it?
I don't know, but a lot of them have like binding arbitration, collective bargaining, and so I don't know how that affects, because a lot of them are on contracts. So I don't know exactly how that works. I'd have to reach out to them, but, yeah, the statute she's talking about, I never remember the number. I always want to say Title 19, 547, but I'm pretty sure that's the just cause statute, but, and the statute says something along, the county may adopt a vacation and sick leave policy, but it can't be more generous than that of those in the classified service that work for the state. That's kind of what the policy says. Let me see. Yeah, here it is right here. So Title 19, 1301. And it says each county, the weird thing for me in the argument I kept making is that the title of it said vacation and sick leave plan. It didn't say anything about holiday. And there's nothing in the statute that we can find that specifically addresses holiday. And so the statute says, each county may develop and maintain a formal plan for vacation and sick leave for regular employees. No person chosen by election or appointment to fill an elective office shall be subject to leave. Of course, we know that the electeds don't have leave. Nor shall such person be eligible for accrual of any leave benefits. And then it says, any leave plan adopted by a county shall not extend benefits to any employee in excess of leave benefits available to a regular state employee in the classified service. And so where it came back to was that the argument was made that those that are in the classified service of the state get 8 hours. So we shouldn't be able to grant or extend leave benefits beyond that. And that's where it was left off, and that's why we complied once the handbook changed, and it's been years. It's been back in the Doug days.
So what would be comparable as a state employee?
Well, it's
Highway
hard.
patrol or?
Well, it's hard to say that because again, how
To me, DOC correctional officers.
Okay, so how do they work? What do they do about holidays?
yeah. See, it's like people like OHP, for example, that they get as many holiday hours as they work because again they're on contract. So those guys are, they're just different. Same thing with like I guess Oklahoma City's not a good example, but when they say the classified service, I take that as people like mission. The employees like that. Like, as a matter of fact, I don't think DOC would be considered classified service.
I'm just trying to think who is a state employee that, has to work holidays. So they're not gonna always get off.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I may be wrong, but I don't think DOC is considered classified service. Again, that's office folks, like I said, your tax commission, your employees like that. So, yeah, I'm happy to revisit it. I'd love to be able to. Our employees would love to not have to put their own personal leave in if they can get away with that, or come in and work. So that's their options. So, but again, I know we battled not the right word, but we talked about that in here extensively for quite some time in the past. I mean, it was the topic of
So
conversation.
statutorily, it's been deemed that the 8 hours. Is that what we've said? That
Yeah. Well, there
was an opinion
that DA's opinion. Yeah. But from my knowledge, from my recollection, not knowledge, my recollection was that there's no specific statute that addresses holiday leave use. It specifically addresses vacation and sick leave, and it's specific to those in the classified service. So that's the.
And there's always the general rule that no state or county government can act in any way except by statute. So we have to have statutory authority to act. So if they limit the discussion to 8 hours, that's the basic rationale behind that.
Yeah.
But I don't recall the specifics, but I remember because like you said, there was nothing that addressed this, that it fell in kind of a gap area, which is where you've been struggling with this entire time, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, it's not struggle. The employees don't like it, but they just put it in leave, but they come in and work the rest of the day.
Helpful to know the background.
Yeah. And again, I don't remember when those meetings were. I mean, they were years ago at this point.
And at one time, didn't y'all do, like, y'all are on 12-hour shifts,
We still are.
still are,
Yeah.
but at one time, weren't they all on 3, didn't you have? Or am I thinking juvenile that was working 8-hour 3 shifts and there's 3 shifts?
Well, we have a collection of everything. We've got 8 hours, 10 hours, and 12 hours.
Okay.
It just depends on the division and where they're at. Our patrol guys work 12s. The courthouse that are Monday through Friday is it's a little bit easier to stick and bring or closer to banker's hours. Our schools, obviously, they're a little bit different. Those are by contract again. So,
And then just for my clarification, if they are not scheduled, just because of how their schedule works, to work on the holiday anyway,
the lead goes.
then yeah, you don't want them to miss out on
Yeah,
the
it's not their
fee.
fault.
So they get, and they can take that.
Not a later time.
Just, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And what was the thing that y'all were saying then that made it look like they were double dipping or something?
So it'd be the scenario where somebody is scheduled to work and they do not work. Because on the time card, it will say that Brandon was given 8 hours of holiday leave. Brandon took 8 hours of holiday leave because I actually used that day as my holiday. So it didn't go into my bucket. It was used as an actual pay code to go towards my
It's like it cancels each other out.
towards my salary. It looks the
Like
ideally
one's a positive, one's a negative.
exactly. One, it looks like they cancel each other out, but the way that it appeared to me on the report that they had was that it was showing that they got paid twice for the same leave.
Like it was two positives.
But on the backside, the way that, like for example, the whole admin thing, or like and non-comp pay, that was the other. I was thinking there was 2 codes. It wasn't 2 different admins. It was admin and non-comp pay. One adds time to the sheet, and one doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with like
Yes.
this holiday thing. So it's how the work rule and the pay rule is set up on the backside of that pay code.
Mm-hmm.
So it's which ends up spitting out a report that doesn't make any sense to somebody who doesn't have that knowledge of how that may or may not work. So, but that's what I understood it to be, was that there were some people who ended up having like 170, 180 hours of time. They were like, well, that doesn't make sense. How do they have that much time? And it was because when I looked at the report, I was like, well, it's because this person doesn't work on this holiday. So it showed they got the holiday. They were scheduled to work, but since it was a holiday, they got the holiday time, but they also took the holiday time the same day, which it looks like they got 16 hours for one day, not 8. And, on the few examples, and the reason they said, yeah, we're totally good with those explanations, I said, give me an example, I'll pull it up. And so we pulled up a couple of examples on my computer in his office, or in the office we're meeting in. And I said, okay, well, here's what they started at, here's what they ended the year with, and here's how many hours it took. So you can tell that it jived. Just the report that they had wasn't right. But again, it's just how you pull the report. So,
That's what I'm saying. I mean, maybe the reports just need to be pulled differently next time.
Well, and again, I think it's, again, it's just these canned reports that, the problem is, I mean, they need to be manipulated, but obviously that's a terrible word to use with an auditor. They need to be modified to take out some of the pay codes that pop up on this sheet. I don't know if you've ever looked at some of these reports that Executive spits out, but they're sort of complicated.
Yeah, no, they are. Yeah.
And unless you would know, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the reason it's different. This is what I explained to them. Because annual leave and sick leave are not earned leave statuses. They're granted leave statuses. So they don't appear on the time card as an earned status. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it just automatically gets thrown into a bucket
Mm-hmm.
on the appropriate day.
Right.
Whereas holiday is an
You have
earned
earned
status.
and used.
Correct. So it shows on their earned and used.
Right.
Which is why.
That's why it's doubling up.
Exactly. So.
Well, the thing is, it's like the report settings in Munis need to be set as such as where earned is plus and used is negative.
Yeah.
But that way they cancel each other out instead of doubling up.
Yeah. No, that's not it.
No, not this. You might look at the, no, this is today's agenda. You might look at the August 13th, 2019 agenda.
Okay. So that's how long ago,
Mhm.
August 13, 2019. Okay.
That's when Doug had put this whole thing on
Okay.
to go
Yeah, there you go.
to the DA's
Yeah.
office.
I know that we had proposed questions, then again, when that got back, so. Okay.
So that's the one I would start with. And the next one.
Based on a regularly scheduled day for that employee.
Right. That's how it used to read.
Right.
And so that's why we just gave them whatever hours they worked. So if they worked 12, if they worked 10, that's what we gave them. Based on a regularly scheduled.
And then it's one more page information.
So it would have been 8 hours regular pay, and then you would have maybe classified the rest of it as holiday.
No, back then we did all holiday.
It was just
Yeah,
all holiday.
Yeah, the handbook was based on a regularly scheduled thing. Boy, I couldn't remember the exact verbiage, but that.
And there is a video for that one. also.
Okay. And so when we talked about that, or back then what we did is if somebody worked 12 hours, we just gave them 12 hours of holiday. So back then that was the days of Chronos. Chronos, I just was able to set up a pay code on the backside that based on whatever schedule you had, it automatically plugged in the appropriate time if you work. And then what happened is that Chronos, if you it had the wherewithal to set up if you clocked in and out, it would either adjust for the amount of hours that you clocked in. So let's say you can work 4 days, you still get 8 hours of holiday to work for. Or if you clocked in the whole day and all your 12 hours, you put all those in your bucket instead. So it kind of made all those decisions. There was a decision tree set up in the backside. on the
Oh, well,
back end
that's
of
nice.
Chronos. So
Not that it really matters, but how many employees are we talking about? Like this would affect
hundreds.
100.
Yeah.
That
I mean, all of us.
get off.
Detention center.
Like on any
sheriff's-
given holiday,
Yeah.
there's hundreds
Sure.
that
Yeah, I
are.
mean, if you consider
Juvenile.
juveniles, 100 and some employees, if you consider our 200 employees, or 200 and however many we got, 230 employees, and you consider the detention center 400 employees, yeah, hundreds. Yeah, it's
So on any given holiday, there are hundreds
Sure.
of people
sure.
taking the day off or.
Yeah, it's hundreds.
Or working and
Yeah.
only getting a partial benefit related to their scheduled hours.
I would say there's more maybe. I would say this affects more employees than it doesn't affect. That'd be
Yeah,
my
that's-
I guess that's what I was
true.
getting at.
Yeah.
Are more of them.
I mean, we're talking, I don't know how many counties an employee has that are full-time, but the number of employees that this affects would be anybody that's considered 28-day cycle, which would be us, the jail, and juvenile. So we're talking about, again, I think juvenile's got 130 employees. We've got 230 or so employees, so there's 360. You're talking about the jails. You're talking about the jails 400. So we're talking about 760 employees. I'm pretty sure that's over half the county.
Yep.
Okay then.
And you said you had a meeting at 3:00?
Yeah, I think we're giving the jail too much.
Yeah, maybe so. Going by
We get the point.
Oh, it is almost 3:00.
When you say that there's a lot going on, I apologize, I had set a very important phone call with the Ed and city manager at 3:00. And it affects our admin office that we are.
Their own speaker will help.
Anyway.
I feel like I learned a lot.
What I'd like to do, I think we have two choices. We can keep this meeting open, we can adjourn, but we would have to pick a day today to return back to time and place and date. Or we can go ahead, adjourn this meeting, keep a similar agenda, see if anything new pops up. But it's evidence that we have a lot of work to do. I really think, I hate it that we're meeting. We can have special meetings anytime. There's a lot going on in the building budget with this and that. Well, we could go on for days. But this is critical to our employees, to the taxpayers, and to us. So there's a lot going on, and it's important. I'd love to get this 28-day deal fixed. I'd like the handbook to get cut way down. And we'll clean up the admin stuff, administrative leave. But it doesn't need to be laborious. You guys are very bright. I'm glad you're here. Love to have Joe here. Hopefully the next meeting we have will have district. Had an election.
I mean, maybe we need to get some clarification on the 20-day cycle and exactly what it is the auditors are wanting, because based on what Paul read and based on what the actual policy said, I don't see where there's a problem. And I didn't see where there was a problem when they came and talked to us. I contend that it was an explanation issue, not a policy issue. That was my understanding. But again, for the record, I'm totally happy with revisiting the 12 hours if that's anywhere possible.
Paul, are you looking for wording to respond to as chairman's office to respond to the auditor?
No, auditor has already been responded to.
Okay. All right.
That's not the issue.
Okay.
It was simply a time thing, so we don't get the same non-reportable, maybe reportable finding on the next act.
Paul, could you forward me that audit version? But you want to talk about your reading that?
And I would like,
This doesn't affect everything that was. I'm happy to give you this list.
Okay,
that I
that's fine.
typed
I
up.
was just wondering,
The only
I'm
ones
trying to understand what.
The only ones I did not include were any that were county clerk specific, because they're handling those.
Right.
internally.
I would like to point out, we're gonna get the same finding again, we have no choice. And the reason I said is because this audit went through June of 2023.
Yeah,
June of 2024 is already closed, we can't go back in time and fix that.
right. I mean,
So
we're
whatever, so when
already
the
gonna
actor
have-
for FY24 comes out, we're gonna have to get the exact same things again.
You're right.
You see what I'm saying? So, and that's why that's what I asked that, and I said, well, hold on here. It's my understanding that this thing will move to a reportable next time, we don't have time to fix it. They said it should, and it won't. That's what they told me. So if you had a different understanding, that's why I said, maybe we need to get clarification, because obviously we don't want reportables if possible. So,
Right.
yeah, because FY24, obviously, it's gone.
There's nothing we can do about it now, except go
So-
forward.
Rick's got a DeLorean.
So would you guys like to adjourn this meeting, or would you like to just kind of put the meeting on hold and set a date and time certain?
Well, if she's gonna do some research, and if we need to maybe get some more clarification on the 20-day cycle, unless we shove the date out a little bit further, I don't see why we wouldn't have enough time to redo it. Even if we did the exact same agenda, just to schedule another meeting.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. It's,
And we'll just.
Yeah, we'll get together. Let Cassie know if you have holidays or
Thursday
anything.
afternoon or be- yeah, good.
Yeah.
I'll make it work.
I know I'm out in mid-April on a quick trip. In the middle of the month. So-
I'm also out in
April
so
15th it is.
let her know when
Well,
you're available.
We're heavy into budget.
Let me know when you're
Yeah.
not available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're not
specifically pretty much for a
available.
long
And then we'll
period of
pick it
time.
up, okay?
Other than
Well,
budget.
Right.
I hate to cut the meeting short, but. we
I
have-
move to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, newbies.